want to be sure that we do continue to do these and provide updates and letting you know where we are, what's going on. And as I said before, the landscape is constantly changing. Certainly with some news this week, and we'll talk about that, perhaps gives us some clearer direction of where we're going and what's next. But from the feedback that you gave us last time, it looks like you do appreciate the format. And we have invited back, as we did last time, several members of the leadership team to really talk about and share what's going on and answer questions that have been coming in. Once again, I've asked Justin Lonan, our Executive Vice Chancellor, to help guide the conversation today and kind of keep us on track and make sure that we get to the questions that you've sent to us. Linda Brady, the president of Brookhaven College and our interim provost, will comment on many of the items impacting our academic programs and services. Joe Seabrooks, president of Cedar Valley College and interim vice chancellor of Student Success, is with us as well. Sherry Enright, our human resources officer, is also on today. John Robertson, our chief financial officer, on, and Patty Ariano Talata, our Chief Marketing Communications Officer, will be here to answer questions. So again, thank you so much for joining us. And with that, Justin, let's jump right in, because I know folks have a lot on their mind, and we want to be sure to get to as many of them as we can today. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Dr. May. And again, as Dr. May said, thank you all for joining us again. Last time was so popular, we broke WebEx right at the end. So hopefully all goes well today. But as Dr. May said, we're coming to you from the same rooms we were in before. Hair may be a little longer, could be a little grayer. And then we also have Dr. Seabrooks and John joining us that are less concerned about those topics. So anyway, we're glad you're all here. And as Dr. May said, we've got a lot to get to, and so with that, we'll dive right in. And the first question is for you, Dr. May. As we sit here today, the landscape has continued to shift nationally and also here locally. So from your vantage point, can you provide us with your perspective on where we go from here?
Yeah, sure. Let me kind of start. I mean, if there's good news out there, there is good news that we, from the CDC and other medical professionals, we're getting a better understanding about the coronavirus and how once a person is infected with it and contracts COVID-19, what are the symptoms, what that does. So it's becoming easier for us to understand. The difficult challenge is that we've now surpassed, last time we talked, there were 600,000 individuals affected. Now it's over 1 million. 58,000 people have died. It's getting to the point where virtually all of us are being touched by someone that's been affected by the disease in a negative way. In Dallas, more than 3,000 people have been infected, with 84 members of our community have perished, and including just a 17-year-old out of Lancaster this past week. So getting close to home. Certainly, the tragedy is something that we're full aware of, and you may have heard that Governor Greg Abbott announced Monday that some of the stay-at-home orders will expire today. And yet not everything will be reopening. So there's going to be a phased in on that, and we'll be really kind of sorting through that here, and perhaps we can talk more about that later today as to what that means for us and you and our students and the district as a whole. While this feels like a step toward normalcy, there are really still just a whole lot of questions about COVID-19. While we know some things now we didn't know before, we certainly are hearing more news perhaps on vaccines and other things that will have an impact on our decision. And in some areas, we are seeing a flattening of the curve, but not everywhere in North Texas. In some areas, we're still seeing accelerated cases. And it's just where folks aren't being as cautious and careful coming into close proximity with others, and unfortunately, the speed at which this virus travels is such that by the time we realize what's going on, it's almost too late to deal with it. So we, hopefully, as we look at it, we're both looking forward with a sense of optimism, while our feet fully grounded in the reality that we are responsible for providing a safe environment for you as employees, for our students, and for any community members that we may be serving. And again, I said a few moments ago, we're looking to begin to contemplate what it means with this new responsibility that we've had since the last time we talked, of really having to weigh these decisions, knowing that on one hand, we'd like to see things become more normal. On the other hand, as you communicated with me, more of you are experiencing the pain of this pandemic as a result from the impact on loved ones, family members, others that are there. So my thoughts are with all of you that have faced this in a real and personal way. This is unprecedented in our lifetime, and what I do know is that we're taking in all the information that we're able to receive, really trying to make the best decisions that we possibly can for all of you as faculty, staff, administrators, and we're doing this independently of what others may be doing. Everyone, and that's kind of the challenge today. Every leader of every organization has to really weigh what's happening within their own sphere of influence and make the best decisions possible. And for us, that includes employees as well as students, as well as community members. So we're thankful as we see some of the victories that have occurred over the areas. We've got more than 900,000 people have recovered, with 117,000 in the U.S. and 11,000 Texans have recovered. I was reading recently about a 6-month-old baby in the UK who had beat coronavirus after having open heart surgery. And that just gives, I think, a warm feeling for all of us. And the countless stories of elderly who have put themselves at risk to help neighbors and others, as we've really tried to be a stronger community while keeping a safe distance to ensure everyone's safety. So again, thank you for your understanding and your support today by coming together as the DCCCD family. Justin, I'll kick it back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. May, and really do appreciate your thoughts and perspectives. Certainly, we do have employees and families who have been directly impacted, and so really appreciate your understanding of that. And let's continue on a little bit with your perspective as the district, as an organization, has had to make some significant shifts to adjust to this crisis and ensure that we're serving our students and our communities. What are your observations as we enter week 7 of virtual teaching and remote operations?
Yeah, thanks for that. And I would say a little different this week than last week. Last week I was, because folks had jumped into this in an unexpected way with both feet, rolling up their sleeves, figuring out how we serve students. I mean, we managed to convert 15,000 students to online. Last week, I think everyone was just really feeling the fatigue of the weeks of work, from being on videos all day long, much as we are here, the focus, the energy, the long days that were out there, and frankly, kind of the odd relationship at home where you're there but not really in contact with folks while you're working. So I'm very much aware of that. I would say that we've proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that we can be an agile, fast-moving organization that when we put students first, we can move mountains to meet their individual needs, and we've certainly done that. This has pointed out the importance of our move to one college, and we've accelerated that effort as we put that in place. I'll be talking to the board more about this at Tuesday's board meeting. Again, just thank our communications team. It's been an incredibly well-run, coordinated effort to make sure that everyone was hearing the same message at the same time, whether you be an employee, a student, or a member of the community, that we were all on the same page, and just really appreciate that. I would say as we look to the future, I think and certainly I heard from Governor Abbott, his announcement. I felt a sense of optimism. Maybe we were turning a corner that's there, and certainly getting some business back opened up is important. But at the same time, it caused people to kind of look inward and go. Some said, I'm ready for that, and others said, oh no, I'm not. And I think that we still have to balance those needs of individuals that just simply aren't ready yet to trust that others are going to be looking after their best interest going forward. So I think that's really the balance as I look to the future. We've done the hard work to get here. Now, as we turn the corner, it's a new reality, and we're going to be working to meet the new needs and expectations of our students and our employees.
Thank you, Dr. May. And along those lines, Sherry, I want to turn to you and talk a little bit about how employees are feeling. During the last town hall, we at each of the last two town halls, we asked employees at the end of that to respond to a brief survey and share their thoughts. So can you share a little with us, if you will, the results of the survey and just what's on people's minds?
Sure. And so let me start by saying thank you to all of you who took the time to complete the survey. We had nearly 900 employees respond, which was about a 54% response rate. So we thought that was very good. In terms of some highlights, of those who did respond, almost 95% believed that you were well supported by the organization during this time, that you felt the communication was good. And hats off to our supervisors, as I felt well supported by my manager category, had the largest number of strongly agreeing respondents. So thank you for that. Over 85% of you believe that the frequency of the communication was sufficient and the communication helped you feel informed. Interestingly, almost 35% of respondents stated that you had no challenges in this environment or working remotely. So that's good. The biggest concerns, though, that were raised related to the general anxiety about the impact of the virus in your life and that social isolation element that Dr. May mentioned. About 75% of you, however, said you could comfortably maintain working from home 3 or more months. So really, overwhelmingly, 97% of you were confident that you had the right support network to help you through this period. And to Dr. May's point, demonstrating that resiliency and dedication of our employees. So I would just like to remind everyone we'll be doing another survey after this town hall, so look for that. And we have a few different questions coming forward.
Yeah, thank you, Sherry, and again, thanks everyone for participating in the surveys and continue to do that. Dr. May, one of the things that has come up repeatedly with a number of the questions we received is around compensation and job security, and we know people are reading lots of headlines about impact with different companies, different organizations. And I know that you sent out an update earlier this week on some of those things and that touched on some of it. But can you share a little bit, where we are right now in terms of compensating employees, including part-time and others that may have difficulty in working from home in this environment?
Sure, and thanks for the question, because that's one that certainly has been on my mind since day one. Even back in the first meeting that we had with the board on March 16th, that was one of the first things that we said, that that none of this was the fault of individuals. We didn't know how long this was going to last. I frankly at the time felt maybe a couple of weeks. Didn't realize we'd be in week 7 of this here, and so we certainly said that we would continue to compensate individuals. We've done so, as we said, all through this month as well. We did have an executive session of the board, and as I communicated on Monday to all of you, we got together last Friday. We discussed the impact of this crisis on personnel, including those who are having challenges working remotely. And I'm going to be taking an item back to the board for consideration, hopefully resolving this issue on through the current contract year, so that we're not really dealing with it on a month-to-month or ad hoc basis. So that'll be up for discussion on May 5th, and we'll be posting that agenda coming forward to, I can't say what the board will do because I don't know, but certainly we're going to do our best to inform them and advise them and what we think is the best way to support our employees going forward. And so in the meantime, payroll will continue as planned for all employees. There's not going to be any disruption from that, and certainly I think that's great, because just as you pointed out, that is not the case with other folks in city governments, county governments, school districts, and elsewhere, universities, not only here in Texas but across the country. So really pleased that we've been able to maintain that during what has been a challenging time, not only from an operational standpoint but financially as well. So.
Well, thank you. I imagine there will be lots of people paying attention to the board meeting next week around that topic and that resolution that you're proposing. So let's talk a little bit about the budget and funding. We had several questions come in where people are again looking at those headlines, seeing some of the strategies that others are taking in the way of freezes or cuts or other things. And so, Dr. May, from your standpoint, has there been discussion about how the district's budget may be impacted for the upcoming fiscal year?
Yeah, I mean, let's kind of take the current year, and obviously, every day seems to produce worse headlines as it relates to GDP, tax revenues. Certainly, that's been the case in Texas, seeing declines in both those from oil and gas revenues, as well as from sales tax and other things that are taking place. The good news is from our operational budget, we've really already received virtually all the dollars for the current year, both from property tax, where again, summer will have some impact perhaps on the revenue side with tuition, but just not that significant for us. And frankly, once we announced that we were going to be online this summer, we were operating. We were afraid enrollment might decline some, but as soon as we announced online, it popped right up. Clearly, that was what folks were looking for and hoping for. And enroll, we may be down slightly, but really not significant. From the state perspective, a lot of talk in Austin about a budget cut for the current year. I'm not taking that off the table, but that just would involve the state dollars. And to remind everyone, roughly 60%, well over half of our budget comes from local property tax. The remainder kind of split between tuition and state funding, with the state funding trending more toward the smallest percent of that. So not insignificant dollars by any means, but in the scheme of things, something that we feel pretty comfortable with this year that we'll be able to manage and not have to make cuts on our end. Now, that's not to say we may not pull back on some things that we had planned on doing. In fact, we, as a part of some of the policy decisions that we had hoped to be implementing and making, some of those required, we hired new full-time faculty and others to be able to offset some of the shifting that we would do. We are not going forward with hiring full-time faculty at this time, just on a limited basis. Reason being, we don't want to get them on board, face some type of shortfall going into the new budget year, and in September, October, have to lay people off that we just brought on board. And so we are being cautious, making sure that we're looking after the needs of our current employees as well. And from a priority point of view, let me just kind of make a couple of things, and probably, Justin, I guess this is as good a place as any to go ahead and talk about it. So when we look at the budget for the coming year, obviously ongoing operations are going to be paramount, that we continue with where we've made the investments, both in our people and our programs and other areas that we continue to go forward there. When it comes to new money, and I suspect we'll either have some or we'll be able to reallocate some dollars along the way to help with this. Number one priority will be some type of salary increase for all employees, not just some groups of that one. Then other things that we would perhaps even investing some of the policy change and others will be bumped down on the list, because we really want to take care of our folks first. So that's kind of as we look at that, where I see the priorities going forward. And we're laying that out without a lot of detail, because the state controller won't really provide us a true snapshot of what's happening for the state until June. But we're getting a pretty good idea about what the direction is. And you may see some headlines where the Speaker of the House called for an immediate 5% budget cut for all of us. You may have heard somebody else kick around a 20%. We're not hearing any of that take legs, but even if it does, we don't see that this would have a dramatic impact in the next throughout the rest of this current fiscal year. And certainly we would have time to take that in consideration and minimize the impact for FY21. So, Justin, if there's any clarification, just let me know there. But hopefully hit some of the things that were on people's minds.
Yeah, no, I think that covers it. And I might just ask you, Dr. Brady, in your role as interim provost, you have worked with the other college presidents a little bit on the faculty hiring that Dr. May was referencing. So any additional comments or context there?
We are moving forward with about 30% of the full-time permanent faculty positions that we had in process at the beginning of this semester, and those are in primarily CTE programs and some for dual credit. The rest of them we are going to fill with temporary full-time positions or with adjuncts. So that was our solution to avoid what Dr. May mentioned earlier.
Great, thank you. Well, we've had several questions that have come in about the CARES Act and how that plays into some of our thinking related to our funding. So John, I'll turn to you if you can kind of give us your perspective a little bit. I know your team and Dr. Piper Wilkins' team have been working on identifying the different aspects of the CARES Act, but can you give us a little idea of how it may impact our overall operational funding?
Sure. The CARES Act is really divided into two parts. The first part is what I'll call a student funding, which is for about $9 million. And those dollars have to go directly to students. It'll benefit students. The guidance on this that we got was a little more restricted than what we had hoped for. One, the students have to be Title IV eligible. So that's one of the things we're looking at, is how do we make the best use of this for the students that are most needy. And there is a team that is working on how to determine those student needs and how this funding can be distributed. We applied for that back on Good Friday and received all our money this week. So that part has been done. The second half we just applied for is also about $9 million, and I'll call that institutional funding. Now that must in some way benefit students. However, the guidance on that has not been released and not totally been determined, but we're looking at how that can still be used to benefit students, but also how can we also use that maybe in some of the institutional areas, like the hotspots and tablets and things that we bought. None of that has been totally determined yet, but we're using that to see, we've set up accounts to hold those monies and then be able to see maybe if we can have some reimbursement for that. So it is progressing right now, and Dr. Wilkins' team is working on how to determine to distribute that student funding.
Yeah, John, and as I understand the part, at least both of those parts, but the one that where we do need to provide emergency aid to students, that roughly $9 million that's there. We can do that. That's not an all-at-once thing. That we really have about a calendar year through September 2021 to award that. So that will allow us to help out students not only now, summer, but next fall and next spring as well. Is that correct?
That is correct, and that's part of what Piper's team is looking at and making sure that some students need emergency aid right now, and we're combining that with any funds that we have available from the foundation to also help as many students as we can. So we're looking at a bunch of different ways that we can try to make sure that students who have been impacted by the pandemic are helped, but also then that way of seeing who can we help in the future.
Yeah. And just to be clear on the second part, it really doesn't go directly in our operating budget to do what we would do for others. We can't supplant with it, but we can use it to support activities related to dealing with the COVID-19 or the coronavirus. Is that correct?
Correct.
Well, great. Well, thank you. Dr. May, you referenced earlier Governor Abbott's stay-at-home order will expire, and several businesses will be open starting tomorrow. So we've certainly had several questions, as you were referencing earlier, wondering how soon we may be open, and then what things look like when we do to ensure a safe working environment. So Dr. May, I'll start with you, and then Sherry, you may want to add some context from the HR side about the return part.
Yeah, and I can understand everyone's kind of eager to understand how that's going to work, and certainly the lifting of the stay-at-home order does give us some flexibility in providing some access back to our campuses beyond just the essential workers. However, as you've probably been following as I have, businesses that have reopened are in order to really inspire trust in their employees and others that they're customers that they're serving are really going to great lengths, as we will need to do as well. We're working on we've been working on our plans and looking at implement those. As you've probably seen, most are taking temperatures of people before they're letting them come in. They're requiring personal protection, at least masks of that. Others are actually investing in electronic technology to ensure that people stay apart. Others are controlling the number of people at any one time that are coming back in. The bottom line is that it really is one that we feel that responsibility of trust on your part, that to have that responsibility to ensure that as you do come back, we're taking care to help ensure that no one that's been infected, to the best of our ability, has also come into the facilities. But just in case, we will continue the wiping down and disinfecting on an ongoing basis. And by the way, while we've been off, that's been going on in a very deep manner at all of our locations. We expect that to continue. We expect to come back with again having folks, in order to be safe, with masks and other ways to ensure that. So as we're planning that out, what what we want to be sure that anyone who comes back onto our campuses or into our facilities is doing so with the assurance that we have done the best of our ability to create a safe, secure, healthy environment for everyone. And that's something we're committed to and continue. That's going to require us to be diligent. This is not a one and done. This is an ongoing as far as we can see into the future. There's going to be some expectations that should by chance someone be exposed to someone with the coronavirus or COVID-19, that we engage in contact tracing to help find out everyone else that they may have in contact with, so that we can warn those individuals and to take the proper medical precautions and look into that situation. So, that's really the next phase. And then that's from an employee. Obviously, that becomes a bigger challenge and a more robust challenge when we get to the number of students. Some of what we can do for employees, I don't see how we can take the temperature daily of over 40,000 students coming in. So we've got to really figure out that balance of how we both ensure that we're guarding against the spread of the virus, providing a high quality education, and allowing our people to work and students to go to school. So all that to say, we're not there yet. We'll be online this summer as we work through some of that. But again, hearing from our students, that's going to inform us. And many of us have told us already they're not coming back in the fall unless they can be online. So we know that sentiment is out there. Certainly not with everyone, but with a large percent. So as we think about this, there's really a lot that we're really balancing going forward, and hopefully that sets. I realize that's not going to satisfy every answer to every question that you have in this space, but we're going to continue to work toward this goal of opening, but doing so in a safe manner.
Yeah, Sherry, I'll turn to you if, from the HR perspective, anything else you need to add to that, but also I ask you at the same time, we continue to get questions from employees, as Dr. May has referenced, that they just may not feel comfortable in returning to the workplace once we do resume in-person operations. So can you share with us a little bit how flexible we're going to be with that?
Sure. So as we've talked about, we really have to do a deep dive assessment of our facilities to determine how many each can safely accommodate, keeping in mind those social distancing guidelines. So, we are looking at a phased approach to bring employees back, looking at job duties, roles, needs, et cetera, including, rotating schedules or some continued remote working. And of course, as we do return to work, as Dr. May mentioned, we will be following all of the CDC guidelines in place at that time with respect to personal protective equipment, temperature checks, additional cleaning. So with respect to those employees who are concerned, as I said earlier, the safety of our workforce is really our top priority. So we're looking at all options, including developing a process to allow employees who maybe fall into one of the CDC's at-risk categories to submit that documentation in some manner, continue to maybe, work from home. We also continue to examine our telecommuting practices overall to see what other options may be feasible for that continued remote working for some of those roles.
Thanks, Sherry. John, let me turn to you along these same lines. We've had several questions come in from employees wanting to know when they might be able to return to campus, just to pick up some items they may need, that faculty may need to pick some things up to prepare them for summer courses. So, John, can you kind of give us a sense of when people may be allowed to return on a limited basis to pick things up?
Well, let's start with faculty first, because faculty that are going to be teaching during the Maymester or summer semesters, we will have a time next Monday and Tuesday at all our instructional locations for those faculty to come in and get the needed items for online instruction during the Maymester and summer terms. The next step would be allowing staff to also get some of those items that they need to work remotely, or as we progress in this and we see what areas can be going from the essential employees to what I'll term critical employees to keep operations moving. And that's where Sherry and Rob and I are working very hard on figuring out what all that plan is, because of utmost concern to us, as Dr. May was talking about, is the safety of our employees who will be back on site and maintaining CDC regulations. So, you know, I want to remind everybody, our locations are closed at this point until a return to work plan can be established, and Dr. May lets everybody know that this is the plan for returning to work.
Yeah, thanks, John. Well, along those same lines, Dr. Seabrooks, let me turn to you because we've had several questions asking about supporting students when we are allowed to return even on a limited basis. So can you talk a little bit based on what John just said? Any thoughts or plans about what those limited activities could look like at some point in the future?
Yeah, you know, I really appreciate that question. And as much as I miss and want to engage with students, after all the things you've just heard, there's just no way in good conscience we can make that recommendation at this point in time. I mean, keeping ourselves safe, keeping our students safe is going to always be at the forefront of our priorities. And although there will be some students who want to interact face-to-face, and although I know there's some professional staff who want to engage student safety face-to-face, it's just not until we have the proper protocols and ways to guarantee or at least come close to feeling comfortable providing a safe environment. We just can't make that recommendation. So, but again, I appreciate the sentiment, but we're just not there yet.
Well, Dr. Seabrooks, let me ask you as well. Dr. May referenced a minute ago that you know, registration is ongoing, and clearly that brings its own challenges in this kind of environment. So can you share with us a little bit of how we've shifted our enrollment process during this virtual environment?
Yeah, you know, I'm really proud. We've made tremendous progress on this front because of the leadership of a lot of folks. We've been able to make a shift to make some transitions with our websites. We have a virtual student resource center where students are, we able to point students to one set of information that's consistent. We have had a huge commitment from our people to unify the 6 steps of enrollment across the board. Over 600 people have participated in that training. However, we still have some work to do. As we speak, IT has been working with us almost literally around the clock to ensure that folks have access to our virtual phone system. Hopefully that will be up and running in a matter of days. We still have some challenges, though, communicating via email. We have multiple email addresses that students respond to that we need to unify those messages and then have a systematic way of responding faster to students. And but we're working diligently to improve the quality of that experience on the front end, as well as thinking about the student experiences once school starts.
Thank you, Dr. Seabrooks. Dr. Brady, let me ask you, we've had some questions, again, in the way of, you know, supporting students through enrollment. We've had some questions, Dr. Brady, on some specific things around assessment and testing, you know, such as TSI and how that will be administered to incoming students. So could you kind of share an update of what your team's worked on around TSI?
Yes, the coordinating board is allowing colleges and universities to waive the TSI requirement for summer and fall registration. So instead, we're going to be placing students based on holistic advising and then other measures such as their high school GPA, overall GPA, their grades in related content courses in math and English. So we're going to be looking at multiple other measures to place students.
Well, there's a similar question that came about online exam proctoring, specifically, placement tests for things you may be familiar with in math, perhaps, and college algebra, different things around ALEKS. So talk to us a little bit about what we may be considering for online proctoring.
Okay, so for the spring semester, faculty who moved to their classes from face-to-face to online have been very flexible regarding their testing procedures and their requirements, since students in those classes may not be fully equipped to participate in online live proctoring. So because for the May semester and summer semester, we know ahead of time that we're doing this online, faculty will be able to utilize proctoring measures, and classes that require specific technology include an annotation in the browsable class schedule. Faculty that are teaching those classes will also be reaching out to students who enroll in those classes to ensure that they understand the requirements. And in all cases, for all courses, the academic deans and vice presidents will ensure that there are class options that do not require specific technology. So there may be requirements for some sections of college algebra that use ALEKS, but then there will be others that don't. So students will definitely have options.
Thank you, Dr. Brady. Patty, let me turn to you and ask you, one of the most difficult things during this environment has been how to communicate all of these many things that are going on. And so obviously we're using lots of different communication channels and vehicles, including these town halls today. But we had a couple questions that came in that were appreciative of the communications that have come, and they want to know if there's plans where some of these updates will come more from campus, be more campus specific, or will continue to come from the system level.
Sure, I'm happy to answer. Well, at the beginning of all this, I think none of us expected it to be changing so rapidly and to come on so strongly at the onset. So we made a decision early on to really centralize all of the communication around this so that, as Dr. May mentioned earlier, so that everyone was receiving the same information at the same time and having the same kind of approach to everything. I think that's helped us move quickly because this thing has been changing so fast, and it continues to as we talk about fall and all these other things. It makes sense for us to continue to come from one voice. But what I will say is the presidents have done a great job of continuing to communicate with their communities, their employees, and making sure that they are amplifying that message, that central message, but also talking to their employees about things that really matter to them for their campus locations. So I think we've been able to work in tandem to talk about what's COVID-19 specific and really make sure we're saying the same thing at the same time, but also ensuring that there's relevant information going to the campuses directly from the president.
Thanks, Patty. Dr. May, let me turn back to you if I could. You know, as we had mentioned before, at the start of the pandemic, you put together several task forces to help unify our responses, and certainly communication was an important one of those. But could you talk to us a little bit about your vision of how this work and these task forces may evolve as we move ahead? And then employees have also asked, are there opportunities for additional employees to participate in some of these task forces?
Yeah, great. And once again, thanks for everyone who was willing to be drafted early on, because the reality is we were hit with this rather quickly. We needed to move at breakneck speed, frankly, with people staying home for spring break in order to help, obviously, with trips canceled. Many more folks were available, so we really appreciated that. And I think as I think about it, we've got our ongoing operations as the district. That certainly many of these got disrupted, but we're still going to be going forward in many of the usual ways. That's why it's important that we do retain, even though not everyone can contribute right now and work, that we maintain people on the payroll, because when we go back, we're going to need them in place to continue with these very important roles and responsibilities that just aren't able to be handled virtually. We'll continue with this transition through summer with our response to the coronavirus and how we adjust to that and rebuild it. But then at the same time, this move to one college is going to also require us to really expand out and be more inclusive. And in fact, we are looking for volunteers right now, folks, to help us as we begin to implement. One of the things that has occurred as a result of the rapidly shifting and implementing some of the structures that we weren't really going to implement, some of them until this fall. We're about 6 months ahead of schedule in some of this, which means that we are going to need more people to provide input to help us be thoughtful as we make the adjustment. I mean, you've heard earlier from both Dr. Seabrooks, Dr. Brady, others, the importance of getting that information from faculty, staff, students that are out there. So we are looking for folks. So let me know. Use the email to contact your president, others, and we're more than happy to follow up.
Thank you, Dr. May. Dr. Seabrooks, let me turn back to you. We've had a couple questions that sort of fit with what Dr. May was just talking about in related to some people maybe not being able to do their role in this current environment. And also, Dr. May mentioned volunteers, but a lot of the questions have come in. People really want to know how they can help students. So, Dr. Seabrooks, does the district have any ability to utilize a step outside of their norm?
I think I'm sorry, Jesse, you cut out there for a second, but I think I got the question. Absolutely. What we have to always remember is that the only thing that we can control in this space is our student experience. And so, and I know that folks are traditionally used to facing students and helping them directly in person. But because of our wellness campaign, we have touched almost 50,000 students by individuals volunteering or carving out time out of their work to make these calls happen. And I'm going to just tell you, it has made a difference in students feeling that they've made the right choice by coming to our institution. In fact, Chancellor mentioned summer enrollment, and we are well on pace to meet our goal. I think our goal was to have almost 19,000 students for the summer, and we are right there, and we have almost 4 weeks to go before the first day of classes. And so moving forward, I think being willing to touch students in an appropriate way via phone, via emails, to be responsive, and as we can continue in that vein, I think we will absolutely win new students over and assure that the students who've chosen us make the right decision.
Great, thank you, Dr. Seabrooks. Dr. Brady, let me turn to you. I know you and your team, and certainly some questions that we had from faculty members were asking about pass-fail, as people are very sensitive to the environment and situations that students are in right now. And so can you share with us a little more about our decision to not adopt a pass-fail?
Sure. Based on consultations with the academic vice presidents, with faculty, with my entire student academic success task force, we concluded that option using pass-fail grades was not in the best interest of our students. Because, for example, students in dual credit classes, veteran students, students in various industry credentialed programs like students in nursing, all depend on receiving a letter grade for things like competitive placement in special admissions programs, for financial aid, just something as basic as that, and other academic requirements. So I know faculty are deeply concerned about how students are making it in this environment. I hear from you every day about concerns that you have and ways that you're going above and beyond to help students succeed. So faculty have been incredibly flexible in determining how to evaluate student progress and to award grades in their classes this spring semester. They've been increasingly flexible and creative in managing assignments and exams and deadlines and grading practices while still making sure that they achieve the designated student learning outcomes in each of their classes. So in addition to what the faculty are doing directly for students, we're doing all we can from a policy perspective, administrative perspective, to mitigate negative consequences for students who might choose to drop a class. So anytime between spring break and the end of the semester, for any student that drops a class during that time period, we've implemented temporarily a policy that they will automatically get 100% tuition refund. They don't have to file a request for it. There's no appeals process. It just automatically happens so that they're not penalized for that. In addition, the W that they would receive for dropping the class will not be counted against their 6W limit. So I feel like we're all working together to try to ensure that all students are well served. So students who need the letter grades can get them, and then students can make decisions about their own academic progress and their academic career for themselves based on the fact that we're trying to help mitigate any negative consequences for dropping classes.
Thank you, Dr. Brady. Well, with the few minutes we have left, let's hit a few questions. Dr. May, we've had several questions asking about what the status is of our move to single accreditation and how that relates to our plans for Dallas College. And then also a companion question to that is that some employees have questioned the leadership pool positions that we recently had open, and people are asking for clarification of, how can we still be seeking to fill those roles during the pandemic? Did we lose Dr. May?
Sorry about that. As much as I practice, I still manage to forget to unmute sometimes. So bear with me. No, both of these are really important questions. One, the historic change of the district from 7 separately accredited colleges to single accreditation, as was approved by the board last August. So we've been underway once that decision was made to fully implement that. We at the very day the board held their emergency meeting in March was the day that that SACS received the documentation on our request forward. They were looking at delaying the consideration to August. They've agreed to consider it now in June, so literally a few weeks away for that happening. So we are. It's absolutely not only imperative that we continue with looking at the restructuring in the pool and putting together the one college structure. So it's really since that decision is done in terms of one college, and just waiting on the deadline to go ahead and implement that based on SACS. We do need to be in a position to make that happen. So we will move forward with the filling of levels 2 and 3, and at that point we'll open back up and we'll engage others in the pool process or open that as we move into to level 4. So we'll be handling that over the next few weeks. The first 2 that, it's going to be difficult. In an ideal world, I would like to announce the provost and the vice provost. We may end up needing to do several of these together just because of the sequencing of it. and the ability to manage the interviews since several people have expressed interest in more than one position. We certainly want to give that full consideration and respect people. And I just want to thank everyone that that reached out, took the time to express interest, and I'm just blown away by the quality of people that we have within the organization. So feel really good about our ability to identify most of the key spots from folks internally as we then move into that new world of being Dallas College.
Well, we're winding down in time, so again, we're going to do a lightning round on a couple of these. So, Patty, I'm going to turn to you real quick to follow on with what Dr. May was talking about with Dallas College. Obviously, there's a big undertaking that's going to have to occur to rebrand ourselves as Dallas College. So, can you share with us a little bit some of the thinking and plans around that transition?
Sure. We have a team of people that are working actively right now to put together a launch campaign that would introduce Dallas College to the world once we get approved by SAC-COC. That's going to include a refresh of the existing logo that really builds on the equity, the brand equity that we've had for the past 50 plus years. And we are going to show that to the board on Tuesday. So another reason to tune into the board meeting on Tuesday. But we are also working on the website. So the website will need to be migrated, and that means that we're actually going to be implementing a website freeze starting on May the 18th. Doesn't mean we won't update some things, especially related to COVID-19, but we will kind of need to put a pause on a lot of the things that we don't need to have right now so that we can focus on getting it ready for Dallas College. So we've got a lot going on, and I want to thank all the employees who did sign up to look at the two logo options that we had. The one that we're presenting to the board on Tuesday won by a landslide. So I think there's pretty good consensus about where we're going. So now we just have to cross our fingers that the board likes it too.
Very good. Thanks, Patty. Well, Dr. May, for our last question here, let me turn to you. There's been a lot of questions and focus about what we may be doing for the fall. And so can you kind of give us a sense of where we're leaning, what the thinking is at this point?
Yeah, and obviously it's very similar to the question asked earlier about returning and safety, and we're going to really be evaluating that. But it's not only the ability to ensure a safe environment for our faculty, staff, and students. It's really accommodating the anxiety and concerns that many individuals are having today. Certainly, we've got many folks that have expressed an eagerness to return, and some of them really wanting to get back into their labs and finish up some of the projects and get things underway, while other students have reached out in quite impassioned pleas to continue online, that they're concerned about the availability of vaccines, the availability of testing, the ability for us to do the adequate screening that would be necessary. And certainly, we're going to do our best to take care of that screening going forward. So I'm going to be having this discussion with the board in some detail on Tuesday, laying out the options, the pros and cons of remaining in an online operation versus going back to more traditional face-to-face. And you've seen colleges have announced you have some of them announced they're going back to normal operations, and others that have announced they're staying online for the next year. So what others are doing is not a lot of guidance for us, because we really have to evaluate it based on our ability to respond and to ensure that everyone is safe, healthy, and able to learn in this environment, and our employees are able to work in a safe manner.
Well, thank you, and thanks everybody for participating. That's all the time we have for the questions. Please keep sending them in to townhall@dccccd.edu. We'll continue to post responses there and on our FAQ site. So, Dr. May, I'll turn it over to you for final remarks.
No, once again, I just start where we began, thanking each of you for what you're doing for our students, for our employers, for our community. Justin, I just thank you for helping really guide this conversation. as we wrap up, be sure to continue to submit your questions to townhall at dccccd.edu. We'll post the responses on that. And then when you sign off today, look for the survey. It gives us the feedback that we need, because we're going to continue these so that folks are up to date, and that we can respond to the new questions that are on your mind as we deal with an evolving landscape. So thank you again, and have a great remainder of the week.